The forest floor is silent except for the sound of her breathing. Faye Schulman lies motionless behind a fallen birch tree, her finger resting against the trigger of a rifle she barely knows how to hold. 20 meters away, a German patrol moves through the clearing, boots crushing autumn leaves, voices casual with the confidence of occupiers who believe they own these woods. She is 18 years old. 4 days ago, she was a photographer's daughter in a small Jewish town, taking portraits of families and wedding pictures of young couples who believed they had futures. 3 days ago, the Nazis liquidated her town. She watched them murder her parents, her siblings, everyone she had ever known. 2 days ago, partisan fighters found her hiding in the ruins and offered her a choice: learn to fight or die waiting. Yesterday, they handed her this rifle and taught her how to load it. Today, she aims it at a human being for the first time. Her hands are shaking. The partisans told her the shaking stops after the first shot. They didn't tell her if the nightmares ever do. What she does in the next 30 seconds will define the rest of her life. What she becomes in these woods will haunt and save thousands of people she will never meet. This is the story of Faye Schulman. Lenin, Poland, 1924. Faye Schulman is born into a world that doesn't want her to exist. Her father runs a photography studio in this small town near the Soviet border, one of 1,500 Jews, living among Polish Catholics who tolerate their presence, with the cold civility of people who have learned to coexist without acceptance. The Schulman studio smells like chemicals and possibility. Her father develops portraits in a darkroom barely larger than a closet, teaching Faye to handle negatives with the same care a surgeon handles instruments. She learns to see the world through a lens before she learns to read. By age 12, she can operate the camera herself, framing shots with an intuitive eye for light and shadow that her father recognizes as genuine talent. Photography isn't just a trade for the Schulman family. It's proof of permanence in a world that treats Jewish existence as temporary. The studio sits on Lenin's main street between a bakery and a tailor shop. 3 rooms total. The front room where clients sit for portraits, attempting to look natural while holding unnaturally still. The middle room where her father negotiates prices and displays sample photographs in cheap wooden frames. The back room where magic happens, where blank paper transforms into images under the glow of a red safe light, where chemicals in trays reveal faces and landscapes that existed only as invisible impressions on film. Faye spends hours in that dark room watching her father work. The careful timing, the gentle agitation of developing trays, the moment when an image begins to appear like a ghost materializing from nothing. He teaches her the technical aspects first: aperture settings, shutter speeds, the mathematics of exposure. But he also teaches her something more important: how to see people as they actually are rather than how they want to be seen. How to capture the truth in someone's expression during the half-second when they forget they're being photographed. How to preserve moments that will never exist again. By 1939, Faye is 15 and working as her father's assistant. She handles most of the portrait sessions now. Her father's hands shake too much for reliable camera work, though he never admits why. The tremor started the year the Germans annexed Austria. It worsened when they invaded Czechoslovakia. By the time German forces roll into Poland in September 1939, her father can barely hold a teacup steady, but Faye's hands are rock solid. She photographs weddings, bar mitzvahs, family portraits, young couples who believe they have decades ahead of them. Children who think they'll grow old in this town. Parents who assume their grandchildren will inherit the bakery or the tailor shop or the photography studio. She captures these moments with technical precision and genuine warmth. The subjects smile. The film preserves their smiles. The images suggest futures that will never arrive. The Schulman family survives the initial German occupation through careful invisibility. They pay the required bribes, wear the required armbands, avoid the required areas, obey the required curfews. Her father continues running the studio because even occupying forces need photographers. German officers want portraits to send home to their wives. Soldiers want pictures proving they served in conquered territory. The Nazis want documentation of their efficient administration. So the Schulman studio stays open while other Jewish businesses close. Her father photographs the occupiers with the same careful professionalism he once used for wedding portraits. Faye assists him, loading film, adjusting lights, saying nothing. Every smile she captures feels like a betrayal. Every image she helps create serves the people who are systematically destroying her world. But survival requires compromise. Her father understands this. Faye is learning. August 14, 1942. The liquidation order arrives without warning. Faye is in the studio printing photographs when she hears the trucks. Diesel engines and shouted German commands echo through Lenin's narrow streets. Her father looks up from his work, and in his eyes, she sees something she has never witnessed before. Her father knowing with absolute certainty that he is about to die. The Nazis have done this in dozens of towns already. Round up the Jews, march them to the edge of town, force them to dig their own graves, shoot them systematically, cover the bodies, requisition the emptied homes. Efficient, documented, repeatable. By nightfall, 1,476 Jews from Lenin are dead in a mass grave on the outskirts of town. Faye survives because the Nazis need a photographer. They want documentation of their occupation. Smiling soldiers posing with captured weapons. Officers standing proudly in front of requisitioned buildings. Evidence of German efficiency and control. The selection happens in the town square. SS officers separate the crowd with casual gestures. Left or right. Live or die. Decisions made in seconds based on criteria no one understands. Faye stands with her family. Her mother grips her hand so tightly it goes numb. Her younger brother asks questions no one can answer. Her father stands very straight, as if good posture might save them. An SS officer walks past, reviewing faces like a buyer examining livestock. He pauses in front of Faye's father. "You are the photographer," he states rather than asks. Her father nods. The officer points at Faye. "She assists you?" Another nod. The officer gestures right. Faye and her father move to the smaller group. Her mother, still holding Faye's hand, tries to follow. The officer raises his hand. Only the photographer and his assistant. Her mother's fingers slip from Faye's. Her brother looks confused. Her father starts to protest. The officer's hand moves to his sidearm. Her father stops protesting. That is the last time Faye sees her mother alive. The last time she sees her brother. The last moment her family exists as a complete unit. The larger group marches toward the town's outskirts. Faye and her father are taken to the commandeered town hall where German administrative offices now operate. They are given a list of photographs required. Military installations, supply depots, newly constructed barracks, groups of soldiers, individual officers, standard occupation documentation. Her father sets up his equipment with hands that won't stop shaking. Faye loads the camera because he can't manage the delicate work anymore. They spend 6 hours photographing German efficiency. Every click of the shutter coincides with distant gunfire from the edge of town. Methodical volleys, pauses, more volleys. Her father's face remains completely expressionless. Faye learns to do the same. By evening, the shooting stops. The SS officer returns to inspect their work. He reviews the developed photographs with the careful attention of a man who understands documentation standards. "Acceptable," he declares. The photographer is released to return home. Faye follows her father through empty streets. Their neighbors' houses stand open, doors hanging loose, possessions scattered. The town has been thoroughly looted in the hours since morning. They return to the studio. Her father sits in his chair and doesn't move for 3 hours. Faye sits on the floor. Neither speaks. There is nothing to say that wouldn't require acknowledging what just happened. At midnight, Her father finally stands. He walks to the dark room and begins destroying negatives. Everything from before today, all the weddings, bar mitzvahs, family portraits, all those futures that never arrived. He burns them in the sink. Faye watches the images curl and blacken, her previous life turning to ash. When he finishes, her father looks at her with eyes that have gone somewhere she can't follow. "I am sorry," he says. Then he walks outside and doesn't return. The next morning, Faye finds him in the mass grave where the Nazis made the photographers document their work before killing them too. The partisan camp is located in dense forest where German patrols rarely venture. 43 fighters operating from dugouts covered with branches and earth, invisible from more than 10 meters away. They are Jews, Soviet soldiers cut off from their units, Polish resistance fighters, and a handful of escaped prisoners of war. United by a single purpose: make the German occupation cost as much blood as possible. When Faye arrives, carried half-conscious by the fighters who found her, the camp commander studies her with the calculating detachment of a man who cannot afford sentiment. She is 18 years old, weighs perhaps 90 pounds, and has no military training whatsoever. Normally, he would send her away. The forest is no place for civilians, especially not terrified teenage girls who have just watched their families murdered. But she has one skill that changes his assessment entirely. She knows photography, and she has brought her camera. The partisans found Faye 3 days after the liquidation. She was hiding in the ruins of her father's studio, still clutching the camera she had salvaged before fleeing. No food, no plan, just the irrational conviction that preserving her father's camera somehow preserved him. The fighters debate what to do with her. Most partisan units refuse to take women. They slow operations, create complications, require resources better spent on fighters. But their commander recognizes something useful: the camera. Partisan operations exist in historical darkness. No records, no documentation, no proof they ever fought. After the war, assuming anyone survives, there will be only stories. Stories that people may not believe. But photographs don't lie. Photographs prove existence. Faye's education begins immediately. The partisans can't afford passengers. Everyone contributes or everyone dies. A former Soviet army medic named Dmitri teaches her basic battlefield medicine: how to stop bleeding with improvised tourniquets, how to clean wounds with vodka when proper antiseptics aren't available, how to recognize infections before they become fatal, how to amputate frostbitten fingers with a knife sterilized over fire. The lessons are brutal and practical. Dmitri doesn't waste time on theory or explanation. He shows her once. She either learns or people die. Within 2 weeks, Faye is treating minor injuries herself. Bullet grazes, knife wounds, the constant infections that plague men living in wet dugouts without proper hygiene. She learns quickly because failure has immediate consequences. But medical training is only half her education. The camp commander assigns a fighter named Joseph to teach her weapons handling. Joseph is a Polish Jew who escaped a transport train and killed 3 German guards with his bare hands. He approaches teaching with the same ruthless efficiency Dmitri uses. Here is a rifle. Here is how you load it. Here is how you aim. Here is how you shoot. Here is how you clean it so it doesn't jam when you need it. Practice until your hands remember without thinking. Faye's first attempt at shooting goes badly. The rifle kicks harder than she expects. The noise is overwhelming. She misses the target completely and drops the weapon. Joseph picks it up without comment and hands it back to her. Again. She tries again. And again. And again. By evening, her shoulder is bruised purple and her hands shake from exhaustion. Joseph nods with something approaching approval. Better. Tomorrow we continue. The photography training is simpler but carries more weight. The commander explains what he needs documented: partisan camps, operations, fighters, anything proving they existed and fought. But Faye must hide the negatives constantly. If Germans capture the camp and find photographic evidence, everyone in the photographic images will be identified and their families killed. So Faye develops a system. She shoots sparingly, conserving film. She develops negatives in a makeshift darkroom, using stolen chemicals. She stores the negatives in waterproof containers buried in locations only she knows. Every photograph is a risk. Every image is evidence that could doom them all. But the commander believes the risk is worth it. Someday, someone will need proof that Jews fought back. That they didn't go quietly. That some refused to die without taking Germans with them. Faye's camera will provide that proof, if she survives long enough to retrieve it. Winter 1943. Faye Schulman has become someone her parents would not recognize. She moves through the frozen forest with the practiced silence of a predator, rifle slung across her back, medical supplies hidden in a canvas bag that once held her father's camera equipment. The partisans trained her as a nurse because they desperately needed medical personnel and she was willing to learn. But they also trained her to shoot because nurses in partisan units don't get the luxury of being non-combatants. When German forces attack the camp, everyone fights. When supply raids go wrong, everyone covers the retreat. When ambushes turn into firefights, there is no rear line where medics wait safely. So Faye learned to do both. Bandage wounds in the morning. Set ambushes at night. Photograph partisan operations for documentation, then hide the film in hollow trees before German sweeps. Treat frostbite and infected bullet wounds with supplies stolen from German medical depots, then help plan the next raid to steal more supplies. Her first combat operation happens on a January night so cold the snow crunches like broken glass underfoot. The target is a German supply convoy traveling from Minsk to a forward garrison. 3 trucks carrying food, ammunition, medical supplies, and winter clothing the partisans desperately need. The plan is simple. Block the road with fallen trees. Wait in ambush positions on both sides. When the convoy stops, open fire. Kill the guards. Take the supplies. Disappear into the forest before German reinforcements arrive. Faye's role is medical support. Stay back from the initial ambush. Treat wounded partisans after the fighting ends. She positions herself 30 meters from the road behind a snow-covered log. Her rifle rests beside her medical bag. She tells herself she won't need the rifle. She's only here to help the wounded. The ambush begins at 11:47 p.m. The lead truck stops when the driver sees the blocked road. Before he can reverse, partisan gunfire erupts from both sides. The sound is deafening even through the muffling snow. Muzzle flashes strobe the darkness. The lead truck's windshield explodes. The driver slumps forward. German soldiers pour from the truck's returning fire. The carefully planned ambush dissolves into chaos. A partisan fighter near Faye takes a slash bullet through the chest and falls backward into the snow. She runs to him, dropping beside his body, hands already reaching for bandages. The wound is bad. Sucking chest wound. Her training takes over. Seal it. Stop the air leak. Apply pressure. Keep him alive until they can evacuate to camp. She works frantically, barely aware of the gunfire continuing around her. Movement in her peripheral vision. A German soldier, separated from his unit, stumbling through the snow directly toward her position. He hasn't seen her yet. His attention is focused on the main firefight. Faye freezes. The wounded partisan beneath her hands is gasping. The German is 5 meters away. 4 meters. Her rifle is on the ground beside her. She can either continue treating the wounded man or pick up the weapon. There is no time for both. The German turns and sees her. His rifle starts to rise. Faye's hand moves to her weapon. She doesn't remember making the decision. Her body acts on training drilled into her through hundreds of practice sessions. She brings the rifle up. The German is shouting something. She pulls the trigger. The rifle kicks. The German falls. She doesn't remember aiming. Doesn't remember consciously choosing to fire. One moment he was standing. The next moment he wasn't. The partisan beneath her hands has stopped breathing. The ambush ends 7 minutes after it began. German reinforcements are already responding. The partisans take what they can carry and withdraw into the forest, dragging their wounded. Faye follows in a daze. Her hands are covered in blood from the partisan she couldn't save. Her first shot killed a man whose face she barely saw. Back at camp, the other fighters congratulate her. Good shooting. Quick reaction. You saved yourself. She nods mechanically. That night, she lies in her dugout staring at nothing. The partisan died because she took too long to shoot. The German died because she was fast enough. She doesn't know which fact disturbs her more. Dmitri finds her before dawn, sitting outside in the snow, staring at her hands. He sits beside her without speaking for several minutes. Eventually, he says quietly, "The first one is the hardest. You did what you had to do." Faye doesn't respond. Dmitri continues, "Tomorrow there will be wounded who need you. That's why you're here. Remember that." She nods slowly. But she knows something has changed. She came to the forest to preserve life through medicine and document history through photography. Now she preserves life by taking it. The girl who learned to see the world through a camera lens has learned to see it through a rifle's sights. And she's getting better at it. May 8th, 1945. Soviet forces liberate the region. The war in Europe ends officially. Faye Schulman emerges from the forest carrying a rifle, a medical bag, and 150 photographic negatives she has hidden and protected for 3 years. Most partisan fighters have no proof of what they endured. Oral histories, fading memories, scars that will never fully heal. Faye has evidence. Photographs of partisan camps in winter, fighters huddled around fires in dugouts barely warmer than the frozen ground outside. Images of weapons, maintenance, of makeshift hospitals, of men and women who look decades older than their actual ages. Pictures of operations, of ambush preparations, of the tents waiting before raids, and photographs of the dead. Partisans killed in combat, villagers executed in reprisals, the mass graves she was forced to document before she escaped. The Nazis wanted photographic evidence of their efficiency. Instead, Faye created photographic evidence of their crimes. The transition to peace is harder than anyone expected. Faye returns to Lenin. The town still exists, but everything that made it home is gone. Her family's house belongs to someone else now. The photography studio has been converted to a grocery shop. The mass grave where her parents died is unmarked. Polish civilians who collaborated with the Germans walk freely through streets where Jewish families once lived. No one is punished, no one is held accountable. The war is over and everyone wants to forget. Faye realizes she has no place here. The girl who left no longer exists. The woman who returned doesn't fit into peacetime society. She moves to Pinsk, then to a displaced persons camp in Germany. She develops her hidden negatives in a makeshift darkroom using supplies stolen from abandoned German facilities. The images emerge from chemicals like ghosts, faces of people she fought beside. Many of them didn't survive the war. The photographs are all that prove they existed. Soviet authorities discover her work in 1946. They want to use her photographs for propaganda, proof of Soviet resistance to fascism, proof that the Red Army liberated grateful populations. Faye refuses. These aren't propaganda images. They're testimony, evidence of what happened when the world looked away. She protects her negatives through interrogations, through pressure, through threats. The Soviets eventually lose interest and move on to more cooperative photographers. But Faye knows her photographs matter. Not for propaganda, for history. Sending them to Jewish organizations, to war crimes investigators, to anyone building a record of what happened. Her images appear in early documentation of Nazi atrocities. Anonymous photographs credited to an unknown partisan photographer. Faye doesn't seek recognition, she seeks acknowledgement, proof that these people lived and fought and died for something. In 1948, she immigrates to Canada. Toronto becomes home. She marries a fellow Holocaust survivor. They have children, build a quiet life far from forests and gunfire. Faye works as a photographer again. Weddings, bar mitzvahs, family portraits. The same work her father did in Lenin. But she never forgets. In her basement, she maintains a darkroom, where she continues developing prints from her partisan negatives. She speaks to schools, synagogues, community groups, telling the story the photographs can't tell alone. What it felt like to watch her town disappear. What it cost to survive. What happened in the forests where Jews fought back. For decades, her testimony is largely ignored. People prefer simpler narratives. Victims who died without resistance. Heroes who liberated camps. The messy reality of Jewish partisans who killed and survived doesn't fit comfortable categories. But Faye continues. In 1995, the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem requests her complete photographic archive. Her negatives join the permanent collection documenting Jewish resistance during World War II. Museums around the world display her images. Historians cite her photographs as primary source evidence of partisan operations. Schools use her pictures to teach students what resistance looked like. The girl, who learned photography in her father's darkroom, created one of the most comprehensive visual records of Jewish partisan activity during the Holocaust. The teenager who picked up a rifle because the alternative was death became one of the most important witnesses to Jewish resistance. And the woman who emerged from the forest carrying hidden negatives ensured that the people who fought beside her would never be forgotten. Faye Schulman died on April 24, 2021, at age 97. Her photographs survive her. 150 negatives preserved through 3 years of partisan warfare. Evidence that some Jews didn't wait for liberation. Some learned to fight. Some survived. And one teenage girl made sure the world would remember.